Many different crimes take place around the world every day. Majority of these crimes go unnoticed, even when there are police and special forces involved in the investigations. These crimes vary from minor degree offenses, such as shoplifting and driving incidents, to more serious crimes, like murder, human trafficking, drug manufacturing, and distribution. Unless the people involved are famous or the crime has led to a national threat, these crimes are often not covered by the media. Therefore, people remain unaware that a crime has even taken place. One crime that takes place in almost every region in the world is drug-related. From possession to supply to smuggling are the most common. Drugs and associated crimes are ones authorities take extremely seriously and try to shut down the operations of the cults. People may have been aware of the drug problems that circle our society. Police recover huge amounts of drugs every year with astronomical street value. They often keep their activities private to prevent raising awareness of their findings and techniques. Even with these tricks up the criminal sleeves, some of the seizure operations are so large that they make it into the headlines. As a reminder of what starts badly ends badly, we have put together a list of 9 top drug busts in history. Number 9. Panama Operation Decked, 2007. We have seen the old tested method of swallowing balloons filled with drugs to smuggle in different countries. A group of smugglers in Panama tried to execute this filthy task in plain sight. The cult filled a large number of bales with coke and loaded it in containers and placed it on top of the deck of a freight-carrying vessel. They were not aware that the DEA and the Coast Guard were aware of the operation and were waiting for the right moment to bust the cartel. Using a Panamanian ship called the Gaton, they seized the operation and confiscated roughly 20 tons of cocaine that had a street value of $20 million at the time. At the time this act was pulled by the DEA and the Coast Guard, it was the biggest maritime seizure by US authorities. Number 8. The UK's biggest haul in 2015. The biggest seizures in the history of the UK took place in April 2015. 2 Turkish men were caught as a result of the bust. Those men tried to smuggle 3.2 tons of cocaine into the UK. The value of the confiscated drugs was estimated to be about $694 million. According to the police officer, the haul was equal to a full year's worth of seizures. The officers, however, found the drugs in a very unconventional way. The vessel, which was speculated to contain drugs in the Aberdeen harbor, found a small amount of coke at the tip of each drill bit as they made it into the vessel's body. The drugs were found in a rather unusual way. Officers searching the vessel in Aberdeen harbor found a tiny quantity of cocaine on the end of one of the drill bits. The discovery leads to further investigation that included French intelligence. They tipped the authorities that the Tanzanian registered ship was carrying huge amounts of drugs. During the investigation at the UK's harbor, the prior disclosed amount was recovered. Number 7. Texas Coke Bust. Authorities in Texas conducted a double bust in 1989. First, they confiscated a ship on the Texas coast in which they found 5 tons stash of cocaine. On the same day, they found another 9-ton stash of coke in the house of a speculated kingpin. Authorities believe that cocaine was originally from Colombia and it was en route to America via Texas. This bust was one of the biggest hits for the drug lord who was responsible for those drugs. It is estimated, making it one of the most successful drug busts in the history of America, with a total street value of cocaine of $1 billion. Number 6. Australia, with 2.8 tons of amphetamines and MDMA. MDMA and amphetamines are 2 of the most popular and most used drugs in Australia. They are popular among partygoers and ravers. These drugs are potentially lethal, and Australian authorities are taking extensive measures to seize the drugs before they make their way onto the streets. On the 14th of November, 2014, Australian authorities seized a large number of drugs. There were 2.8 tons of MDMA and methamphetamine pills ready to be afloat in the market. The cartels and smugglers managed to bring these drugs into Australia via sea cargo from Germany. The drugs were in sealed containers inside different pieces of furniture. It was estimated at the time of seizure that the street value of these drugs was $1.5 billion US. Number 5. Saudi Arabia and Turkey confiscate 30 tons of Captagon materials. Saudi Arabia is a major pinpoint to enter drugs in the Emirates region. In 2010, Saudi and Turkish authorities combined pulling the strings of a drug operation seizing 30 tons of ingredients that were supposed to be used in the manufacturing of a pill called Captagon. The street name of the pill was a jihad pill. The pills were supposed to be sold in the UAE and Turkey. It was one of the largest seizures to date. The ingredients were enough to create 200 million pills that were going to be sold for a total of $1.6 billion. Number 4. The Pablo Escobar seizures. Pablo Escobar was one of the most notorious, documented, and the richest drug lord in the coke market. He was also involved in many other criminal activities, making his per-day earnings to be in the millions of dollars. He had established such connections that over 50% of the coke supply in the US was from his sources. Since his network was so big, he needed many vehicles to transport the drugs into different regions of the world. He used boats, cars, airplanes, helicopters, and even submarines to supply drugs. The DEA was so desperate to catch him that they went to extra lengths that even caused the deaths of many officers and investigators. In 1984, during the operation to seize the supply of drugs, the DEA confiscated 2.2 tons of Escobar's cocaine that had a street value of a staggering $2.2 billion. At the time, his yearly income was estimated to be $25 billion, and even this hit was not much of a worry to him, but the biggest pain was his routes and his suppliers were revealed. Number 3. San Francisco Bust, 1991. San Francisco had the largest number of heroin addicts, but in 1991 it was a little too hard for them to get their fix. Heroin addiction was one of the biggest concerns in the city. The authorities claimed they pulled the biggest haul ever. There was even TV footage of the haul as the crew confiscated the stash. At the time, the authorities could claim that they were responsible for the biggest haul of heroin ever, and there was a total of 1,059 pounds of China white heroin in 49 boxes that arrived in the Bay Area straight from Thailand. The police had intel on the operation and were already on the spot to seize the operation. The total street value of drugs was $2.5 billion. It was the greatest bust ever in history. Sadly, according to an estimate, it was only equal to 5% of the total heroin that is produced around the world in 1991. Number 2. California Haul, 1989. People who lived in the foothills area of San Gabriel Mountain, California, were aware that they were living in a bad neighborhood. The area was home to a big-time drug lord, Rafael Munoz Talavera. The authorities busted a cocaine supply operation, and the amount was around 21 tons. Unfortunately, a year before, 77 tons of cocaine was already passed through the warehouse into the country. This haul was big enough to break records, coming in at $13 billion worth of street value. Number 1. Afghanistan, 2009. Afghanistan is the biggest producer of opium and poppy seeds in the world. According to an estimate, over 90% of the production of these drugs manufacturing ingredients comes from Afghanistan. The Afghan forces led an operation in 2009 and seized 92 tons of opium and poppy seeds. The price of the confiscated goods was so huge, it is difficult to put a price on the value on it. It is credited as the biggest ever drug seizure conducted by the Afghan forces ever. I hope you enjoyed the video. Tell us by dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. I will see you next time.